One of the big questions this awards season, along with, is Joker a responsible movie? Is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood offensive? Well, one of the other big questions that's emerged late in the game, so it's not getting quite the same amount of attention. It will if it wins, though, and I think it might. But is 1917 a great movie, an Oscar-winning, worthy movie, or all the other awards it's picked up so far, without the one continuous shot gimmick? And I don't think it would be. I don't think it is a great movie without that. But it is filmed as one continuous shot. That's, I think, the whole reason for it's the raison d'etre for the film, right? And the one continuous shot is so well executed, so well choreographed, and heightened artistically with lighting choices, set design, etc., that it rises above being a gimmick. I've been using gimmick, and some of you are like, it's not a gimmick, Grace. But I think that when it was first conceived, it's like, how can we plus this movie? How can this movie stand out from the other films? How can this film be Oscar-worthy, awards-worthy? And it's as one continuous shot. But it's so well done that it becomes not a gimmick, even though that's probably how it was initially conceived, but it instead becomes a masterpiece. In fact, I would say it's the greatest one-shot movie of all time. Rope gets points for being first, also from a UK director, Alfred Hitchcock. But this is the best, I believe. I think there's actually no argument there. Some of you might try to make the argument, but you're wrong. Which makes 1917 truly noteworthy in the history of cinema. That's an impressive thing to pull off. It's also interesting, though, that, it's borrowing on this continuous one-shot that, of course, was introduced by Rope a long time ago. The setting is World War I. But because we're constantly following our lead characters from behind, moving forward, that's actually a choice the movie makes. I've put down below a link in the video description to a behind-the-scenes short on how this movie was made, the technical craftsmanship that went into it. And, your mind's already blown, I'm sure, if you've seen this movie, but this will blow your mind even further. But one of the things it details is that the movie makes the choice to always have the camera moving forward, because never backwards, because they're on an important journey. They're racing against the clock. They're on a mission. And that mission has goals, both large and small. They go to many different locales, which are like levels. So the following the character from behind and those other elements, mission elements, I think make 1917 also feel quite a bit like playing a video game. And I'm not sure if that's intentional or not. We'll discuss it more at the acting. But it's very interesting. I would have even more respect for Sam Mendes if he intentionally worked that in there. So far, it's not playing so well with younger audiences. Usually Hollywood divides the demographics 25 under and up. But hopefully they'll discover this film. It's like a video game. Maybe they should have played that up more in the advertising. They should have had video game publications highlight that. But maybe they were like, it's not worth it at potentially undercutting our awards chances. Maybe they should play that up after awards season. But anyway, if I were the Universal's publicity office, I'd have all those articles ready to go the day after it probably wins the Oscar. Because I would say 1917 is a shining example of cinematic craftsmanship, with two glaring exceptions: screenwriting and film acting. So let's discuss that, right? Screenwriting. With the whole brother angle, they're trying to save one of their brothers who's with the battalion that's in danger. The movie comes off a bit like a watered-down Saving Private Ryan. As I've said in other coverage, Sam Mendes is copying the best here, Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg, though, is the executive, his companies are producing this movie, so I'm sure Spielberg's okay with it. But anyway, while it's also very touching that Sam Mendes, he co-wrote the film, based it off of the stories that his grandfather told him about his grandfather's real-life experiences during World War I, the story itself here is pretty basic. And when you hear that, you think back to the story about like the rat and the rat. I don't want to give anything away if you haven't seen it, but you're like, oh yeah, that's why he worked little anecdotes like that, because his grandfather told that to him. And it makes sense because the movie is so strong visually that the script is so bare bones that it's really just an excuse for those visuals. Now, it doesn't have to be, but here, that's what it is. And I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if the movie had better writing and acting, I would feel it was a slam dunk for Best Picture. But as it is, it feels to me like a legit choice, but a safe choice when compared to other nominees like Joker and Parasite. Like, it would be a little sad if the Academy wasn't willing to really step out on a limb there and recognize those films for Best Picture. But 1917 is, as I said, a legit choice. So what's the problem with the acting? Well, George McKay has a great screen presence visually with big wide eyes and a lanky frame. But I don't think he's as charismatic as other actors. He's not electric, right? Which again, this is my thoughts on, where acting comes in with the video games. That adds to the video game feel because his character is more Avatar than fully developed character, like a real character. And while that was initially a criticism I had of the film, when I was writing my notes here, I thought maybe that was, again, a choice that Sam Mendes made. Maybe, again, the video game aspects of the movie are intentional. And McKay will be just fine. I'm sure a big franchise, Marvel, DC, or whatever, will scoop him up because he's British after all, and Hollywood has never been able to resist a British actor. However, there are two very charismatic cameos in the movie. Andrew Scott, who is always a delight and is 110% electric whenever he's on screen. He has some of the funniest lines in the movie. You're like, don't leave the movie. But unfortunately, he's only on there for a few minutes. And then also Mark Strong, who can act with just the lower half of his body. When he first came on screen and you could only see him from the waist down, I was like, who's that? He's just amazing. And I can't even see the top half of his body. The one bit of stunt cast, well, I didn't like him. I mean, outside of those two cameos, I wasn't a fan of the stunt casting. I thought that it would take you out of the movie. You'd be like, oh wow, Colin Firth. This must be an important movie. But again, it's like you have to weigh the pros versus the cons. So the con is it slightly takes you out of the movie, but the pro is that it makes it seem like it's an awards-worthy film, and that's obviously working quite well for this movie. But Benedict Cumberbatch, I thought, was the one just didn't work out of all the cameos, especially because he is so not a boss-level character by any means when he shows up at a vital moment in the third act. Maybe, again, that's also intentional, that, you have this big thing built up in your head and then it's just like this regular dude. Again, I'm still processing it. I think that this will certainly be a film that is studied by cinephiles and film students alike because it's that good. So let's talk about the genius. Because the story is a bit weak, even while watching the movie, you find yourself marveling at its technical prowess. And that's almost, I think, the primary enjoyment of the film. And so maybe that's why the screenwriting and the acting aren't great, because that's not the reason for the film, again, to exist. Like, you're watching it and you're like, did they really build all that, right? Did they build that many trenches? And look how different the UK trenches look from the German trenches. That was such a cool thing. Also, how did they do that with the flares, with the shadows, and how did they choreograph that? How did they go through that window? And again, I hope you'll check out that behind the scenes short that I have linked down below, which has a lot of the answers to those questions. Even if you haven't seen the movie, I think that behind the scenes short might convince you to go, because you're like, I can't believe they did that. Again, much of the enjoyment of the film is not the story or the characters, but seeing the movie pull off this one continuous shot, topping itself from scene to scene in cleverness, technical ability, and artistry. And that makes Sam Mendes, as a director, not so much a writer, but again, he put this whole thing together, and I think that there are things that are intentionally underwhelming to play up other aspects. It's crazy. It's interesting. It's very Nolan-y in that regard. Nolan's like, damn it. So Sam Mendes is the director. Roger Deakins is the cinematographer. But then also production designer Dennis Gassner. Those are the real stars of the movie. And Gassner, by the way, has a stunning resume. He is a 7-time Oscar nominee, including for this movie. I think he's going to win here, but he already won back in 1992 when he was a double nominee in the same category. Double nomination for Barton Fink and Bugsy. What a Sophie's choice, but the Academy went with Bugsy. So for its cinematic craftsmanship, 1917 instantly becomes one of the greatest war movies and just plain movies ever made. Even if the script and acting are weak, that's how amazing its one continuous shot is. And I wonder if in the near future, anyone will try to top it. The challenge to me seems immense, but also immensely appealing, because Mendes and his team really throw down the gauntlet here. It's like, wow, could I do that? I think you'll at least see you've seen a couple like cool hallway, like Daredevil, for instance, had a really good long shot in its sadly final season. But I think you might see more people using long shots as continuous takes as a result of this movie, at least for chunks of their film. I would just be too tempted to try my hand at it because it's so cool. But no one can do it in a war movie. It's done. This is the definitive one-shot war movie. So that's my review of 1917. I'm very curious to hear your own thoughts down below. If you haven't seen it yet, what's still keeping you? Because it's now, of course, playing wide. But I think people will be discovering this movie all the way through until the Oscars air, and probably well after that. It's part of cinematic history. You owe it to yourself to see it, even if you're a casual moviegoer. So share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.